Hello, dear friends. It's Carly, and welcome to another episode of the I Learned podcast. This is a talk therapy episode. This is the first of its kind, likely the first of many if I do this podcast long enough, because what has happened this morning, nothing major, nothing serious is going on here anyway, but I have had an unfolding that has triggered this big ball of energy to spike in my body. It actually feels like it's in my stomach. It's buzzing. It's like lighting me up and pushing against all the resistance that I'm holding on to. It's a very high and a very tense feeling. So it's only partially enjoyable. It's somewhat uncomfortable. And it's really a complex emotion. That's an emotional intelligence term. Simple emotions, like one at a time emotions, those are somewhat easier to name and to understand what's going on. You know, I eat this cupcake, I feel satisfied. That's a pretty straightforward experience. But what happened this morning left me feeling lots of things, is the short version. And it was absolutely a moment where my process and my tools came in handy because, and that's basically what this episode is going to be, is just another continuation of me processing my way through all of this emotional energy that came up in my grid. Because I totally understand that our emotions are our information, you know, going back to the emotional intelligence report that I was quoting from a couple episodes ago and everything that Abraham teaches. Our emotions are guiding us. They are our own personal guidance system to let us know what's happening. And that's all well and good. And I buy into that wholeheartedly. And then a moment like this morning happens where I'm feeling everything. I'm feeling like, like literally joy, anger, sadness, fear, love, surprise. I got it all covered. There's an emotion wheel, and I never did post it last time that I said I would. And so this time I swear I'm going to post it, because that's exactly what I used. I got the idea as I'm feeling into the complexity of this energy. Like, I'm feeling the good and the bad, I'm feeling the love and the upset and the happy with myself and sad for this other person. And I there's just so many different pieces that I'm feeling. And so I pull up the emotion wheel, and I've always thought about it like you would start in the middle. And if you've ever seen it or go look at it, in the middle are like just the basic, like the seven, I think, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. Yeah, the seven basic emotions, which are joy, anger, sadness, fear, love, and surprise. And I always thought that you would start there, that you would start by saying, I feel happy, I feel sad, I feel like you would be able to name the basic thing. But in this moment, and that you would be able to like work out from there. Like, if you pick I feel joy, then there's like, here's all the next level of getting more detailed into what kind of joy are you feeling. And beyond that, there's even more detailed version of like exactly what kind of joy are you really feeling. So I always thought you would start in the middle and work your way out. And today, because I had so many pieces happening in my energy that I didn't know what I was feeling. I couldn't start in the middle because I don't know. I think all of those. I think that's what it is. And so that doesn't really help me. And so instead, I flipped it and I started on the outside. I started with like reading that outer wheel of like the most detailed version of the emotions that are possible, which, as I read that, I think there's probably a whole lot more. But this, working with this wheel gets you really close, gets you a lot closer than I was when I'm like, I think all of them. Which, as it turns out, I was right. I am feeling all of them, because as I trace along that outermost wheel, the most detailed version, I think the most the thing that I knew for certain, the thing that I could say already was that I've been triggered, like triggered. I think that word gets thrown around a lot, and I didn't even find it on the wheel. They don't use that word on the wheel I was looking at, but there was touched and stimulated. And I think both of those would apply. I feel like the situation this morning definitely touched a nerve inside of me. Meaning it instantly, like without me doing anything, like instant reaction is this huge wave of all this energy that's present. And the unfolding of like what actually happened, what took place, it was like 3 minutes long. It was like so short and so poignant. And now I've been sitting with it here for like, over an hour. And it's so powerful because and I don't even want to get into like exactly what happened, but suffice it to say, it's an employee at the store and it's a pattern of behavior that's been going on for several months now. And I've been understanding because before this behavior started, she was my favorite one. She was like the best one. She was amazing at everything. And then, like 4 months ago, it just kind of took this turn, and it's like she just doesn't even want to be there. And so it's been a whole unfolding with her over, not just today at all. And today felt like a like a situation coming to a head. Like we're living this moment again with her, calling in at the store or whatever. And it it instantly touched me. It touched a nerve inside of me that was easy to understand that this is so much bigger than this one employee. And that's the part where I'm hoping talk therapy will kind of open it up for me to be able to see what these pieces are. Um, the little bit of processing that I've done so far was super helpful to take that wheel and look at those emotions around the outside. And the thing is, I could identify and resonate with, I don't know, like 60, 70% of those emotions in that little unfolding, like all in this one little moment that Source lined up for me to experience. It had so many things. Normally we pay good money and then we go sit in a dark theater for 2 hours to experience the full range of human emotion as the movie directors take us through all the different scenes and guide us and, switch the gears and switch the narrative and switch the point of view so that we can like get in and out of all of these different emotions. And here Source delivered it in like 3 minutes. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, complex emotions like, and I've been practicing, and I'm happy that like it doesn't take me long to at least get back into like an upright position with myself. Like, not that I have the answer. That's why I want to do this talk therapy, and that's why I want to understand better like what happened in this manifestation. A whole lot of things happened in a very short amount of time. And some of it felt really good and some of it didn't feel good at all. And the didn't feel good at all part was definitely first. That was first. And then there was the good feeling part. And then there was some different didn't feel good part. Um, it's a very complex situation. And I just can't even get over how helpful it was to have that emotion wheel to start to try to understand like what all is present here in this energy. Like going back to the emotional intelligence set of skills, the very first one, the gateway to emotional intelligence, is perceiving emotions. And that means naming them. That means like figuring out what am I even dealing with here. And I mean, the bottom line of why you would want to be able to do that is that if you understand what you're facing, you'll be better able to respond and to navigate what it is that you're facing. And that's all, again, all well and good. And especially in a much simpler situation, um, and most of the time it is a lot simpler. Complex emotions, they tend to kind of lurk in the shadows and then pop up where we least expect them. And then it's really overwhelming, is the main thing. It's overwhelming and it's complex and there's a lot to it. And every time you think you get a handle on, oh, that's what this is, your hand slips off that train of thought and it goes to this other train of thought where it's like, no, there's also this other piece that you haven't even gotten to yet. So it's like, oh, okay, cool, really, really cool. Really dense emotion that rises in its own time, like it it comes when we're ready to face it. And having the wheel to fall back on in this case was so helpful because, like I said, I truly was feeling all of them. I truly was feeling all of the core emotions in this same 3 minute unfolding. And that's a trip. That's such a trip. It was like honestly so cool. Like now that I'm past the overwhelmed part of it and like able to kind of look back at it and still I feel like now I'm back up on my surfboard, like more riding on the wave versus like I did fall off there for a second and it didn't feel good and I felt overwhelmed. I felt under the wave. Like I'm not in control of this. This is overpowering me. Um, and obviously that doesn't feel good. And so often, especially when it comes to complex emotions, the easiest answer by far is to box that shit up and put it on the curb and have a beer and a banana nut muffin, as Brene Brown puts it. Basically to numb it out, to just like stuff it down and just don't deal with that. Just get on with your life and don't process those big things that feel impossible to process. And the way it unfolded to like pull up that wheel and the fact that I was even having that wheel back at the forefront of my awareness because I had brought it up to a friend to like show it to her and expose her to it, and we had had a couple conversations about it. So all of that groundwork being in place so that this morning when I have this random rush of complex emotions out of nowhere, I have that wheel to go around. And so I feel like I want to go through even I told you like I found touched and stimulated and that was moved and that falls under the category of surprise. So I was feeling the caught off guardness of this, like this is not what I planned. This is not how I thought this morning would go. Um, and yet, here I am, very much existing in this space. So when you say moved, like triggered, it means like your emotional state adjusted faster than your awareness could, I think is what that means. Like the emotion was present before I even knew what was happening, and now my mind is playing catch up. That's what surprise is. And so, I mean, like, even just that one, okay, yeah, that's starting to feel better. I understand that. I understand that my mind is it's gonna catch up. It's just a matter of letting that processing happen. But most of us have a deathly afraid fear of the unknown. So when we feel caught off guard, our natural response is defensiveness. So yeah, surprise can be a really uncomfortable emotion. So that was the first one. The second one is anger. I was also feeling anger, and it the word on the outermost part of the wheel was aggravated, was the one that I identified with the most. Like I said, I mean, I could identify with like 60 to 70% of the outside of that wheel, all different facets of the complexity of these feelings. And it felt really good to give awareness to each of those facets and to honor each of those facets, that you all came forward to tell me something. I know that. And I mean, I'm open, give it to me. Like I'll process what I can process. I'll do my best. I'll use my tools and I'll see what I can get out of it. So here we are. But in the angry category, the one that I resonated with the most was aggravated. And that goes back to, this is a pattern. This is not the first time that we are living this exact moment. And my emotional senses were telling me that she's not being 100% truthful with me. I feel like that she is absolutely taking advantage of me right now. She's playing on my emotions, on my sympathies, and I didn't believe her. That was a huge part of what happened in that moment that only revealed itself to me later. Like, I very much bet on my own emotional instincts, because how I responded to her was absolutely based on the fact that I don't believe what you're telling me. I didn't tell her that at all, but I basically told her, like, either you want to work at the store or you don't. Either you want to participate in the schedule or you don't. Your absent rate is way too high. And if you don't want to, no hard feelings, but then move on and find something that does work for you. And I'll find somebody that wants to be a part of our schedule, that wants to be a part of our team. And, if I truly believed what she told me, I never would have added to that stress or that burden, by also like giving her, like, hey, think about this week and let me know if you do want to continue working at your job. But it was such a pattern of over and over and over and over. And even when she was there, her heart wasn't, her spirit wasn't. And I want her to be happy just as much as I want us to be happy and our team to be happy and the store to be happy and life to be easy there. And her being half in and half out is not helping life to be easy. And it's been that way, like I said, for a while. And I've been understanding and I've been allowing and I've been, just letting whatever's going to unfold. And this morning, before I even knew what was happening, like I said, in the factor of a few minutes, like 180 seconds, it was all over. And I had given her this ultimatum, basically, of like, get in or get out, but like, figure it out and let me know what you decide. And I look back and I'm like, wow, so I on some level decided that she's not being truthful with me, and then I bet money on it, basically, by how I chose to respond. And so after the fact, after I'm sitting with how all of that unfolded, it introduced this whole next wave of complex emotion on top of the complex emotion of being back in that pattern with her and dealing with it in a different way that I've never been so direct with her, or probably with any employee. Being direct and asserting myself is one of those things that I practice, whenever I have to, but it's not my most dominant skill set, and it's not something that I'm ever comfortable with usually. And today was no different. And so after I did be very direct with her, I'm gonna sneeze. Maybe another one. Nope, I think that's it. Um, so after I told her that, and now I'm like back in the space of my office with my journal, and there's like now this shame spiral around, I shouldn't have done that, and I shouldn't have said it that way, and I should have timed it differently, and I should have, all of these different things coming at me from myself around, you didn't do that right. And that, like I said, was like a whole nother wave of complex emotion on top of complex emotion that I was already feeling. And like I said, the word on the outside of the wheel for anger that I found was aggravated, and that traced back to irritable, which is true. Like, this is not the end all be all of the world. There's nothing serious going on here anyway, but it is irritating. It's irritating because mostly things are going really well, and she seems to have some things to figure out in her own life, but all of that is like now causing irritants for me. And it has been causing irritants for me for months, and I have done nothing about it. And today I told her, shit or get off the pot. Obviously, not in those words, but it's like a newfound part of me that's able to say that. And as I journaled through, basically, when I'm in complex emotion, another place that I try to start is here's what happened. Here's my version of events. And I write it just to clarify in my mind, like what even took place just now. And so I start writing that story. And as I go, and as I get to the part where here's how I handled it, and now I feel bad, like I should have done it differently, it lit up somewhere in my awareness that those thoughts and those feelings of you shouldn't have done that, or you did it wrong, or that was a mistake, that those comments are coming from the part of me that never would have done it to begin with. And that felt like profound beyond profound, is that I'm beating myself up for mishandling a situation by default. That was like the default rush of emotion that was going through me, was like to pick it apart and criticize myself for mishandling this. And that's what I realized is like, yeah, you want to pick me apart forever. You don't ever want me to do the thing. You don't ever want me to assert myself. You don't ever want me to say what I need to say. Like, it's never going to be perfect enough to be perfect to say it, according to this part of myself. That part of myself has been historically bad at asserting herself. And now she has a problem with how I asserted myself. Shocker. Not really that shocking that I am allowing my old part to nitpick my new part. Like my old habit is irritated that my new habit that I'm actually deliberately trying to like practice and get better at, my old self has a problem with her. Go figure. Like my old self is getting left behind, and she's feeling like that history has its own gravitational pull, and it tries to pull us back and pull us back and pull us back, and these rushes of emotion come out of nowhere, and all of a sudden we're right back in it, right back in the middle of our worst self-talk of, what have you done? What were you thinking? Oh my God. Like, just totally appalled with myself. Like, how could I behave that way? And it was so extreme and so unfamiliar to where I normally am these days, that it honestly made it that much easier to see that this is not the real me. This is some kind of past programming. This is some kind of past outdated self, because there's a more dominant story happening here. And all of that, like anger, it sparked me back to the emotional intelligence episodes as well, because there was a point that I really wanted to hit about anger in those couple episodes. And you would think with an hour and 45 minutes of talking about emotional intelligence that I would have been able to fit it in there, but I didn't. And so it's fun for another day, AKA this day, like right now, because the quote that I wanted to share about anger is, in fact, it is anger that helps us to overcome adversity, bias, and injustice. Anger arises when we feel frustrated, cheated, or taken advantage of. So that anger is mobilizing. It's mobilizing and it's self-empowering for you to have the guts to do what you need to do to break out of the patterns that your past self is trying to hold you in. Not because like it's bad or whatever, like it has its own gravitational pull. The past will hold on to you. And as you practice these new behaviors, it pops up from time to time. And we still go through the practice of recognizing, like, okay, I recognize this is anger. And I know well enough at this point to know that when I get angry enough to take action, typically that is for the highest good of everyone involved. That, it's a breaking point, it's a tipping point of enough is enough. This is the perfect time to say what needs said, to do what needs done. And to put that old shit behind you, to put that old pattern behind you, to, like there was another one of the, ooh, this was a good one. So this was definitely part of what I initially felt when we stepped back into that pattern with her calling in this morning. There was a section on the wheel called inferior, and I think the other one was inadequate in that same section under insecure, which is under fear. And that surprised me, that rang a bell, that there's a feeling of inferiority, like why isn't she prioritizing her job with our team? Why is that not more important to her? Why don't we score higher on her list of things that she's making happen in her life? She's making her choices, and we don't fit in most of the time. And that was absolutely a feeling of like, ow, like, ow. I mean, I would say offended, but it offended in my mind automatically links to like defensiveness. And it really wasn't. It was like, just why aren't we more important, basically? And so that was really interesting, that like I really don't think I ever would have gotten to like that clarity on that specific piece, especially without the wheel. The other negative one was displeased, was the one that I resonated most with in that section, which leads up to disappointed, which leads up to sadness. So I mean, like I said, she used to be like my favorite member of my team. She was my go-to person. I maxed out her hours as much as she wanted. I loved working with her. She's an awesome person, and she is no longer prioritizing her role with our team. And there has been some sadness around that. Like it's the nature of working with mostly high school kids that we're not their end destination. We're not going to spend the rest of their lives with them. We're a stop along the way for them to learn and grow and experience the world in this new way, and we're a stop. We're a stop along their way. And I've been sensing for a long time, for several months now, that she's making her way out, right? Like she's gotten what she came to get out of this stop, and she's ready to go on to the next stop. And none of that bothers me, but she's been hanging out for several months, like not really doing anything with our stop, but she's also not moving on to a different stop. She just seems really stuck. And um yeah, it definitely triggers sadness. That's absolutely a piece of what's in there. And then, so that's all the shit that is coming up, that, like I said, this is so much bigger than just her. I've been doing this now for 3.5 years. I've had, I don't even know at this point how many high school kids work for me during that time. And all of those relationships were varying levels of successfulness. And at most, kids stick around for a couple years, like they're transient by nature. So none of that is bothersome, but it's the half in, half out part that it does trigger my insecurity. I'm like, either stay or go, but like, get out of my way. I'm trying to do something here. I'm trying to have a team and have it be like flowing together, and we enjoy what we do, and we enjoy working the hours that we're here to work. And there was something about her half in, half out presence that is throwing off the balance of this space that I'm trying to hold. And I've been allowing her to disrupt this flow for months now. And today, I feel like there was a part of me that stood up and said, no, I know what the answer to anger and fear and insecurity and all of that is. I know that the answer is to realize my own power over this situation, to realize my desire and my ability to line up with that and to take the inspired action that needs taken. And in that moment when I was having that 2-minute conversation with her, it like it just came out of my mouth. There wasn't even time to make a conscious choice of like, say this to her, don't say this to her. I knew that this is what I'm going to say. I'm going to say, enough is enough. We're done doing this. And you can think about it and you can let me know. And one way or another, we're moving on from this space. And that's where the positive side of the emotion was also very clearly represented, even from the time I hung up the phone with her. I think the word that I was finding was proud. And proud is one of those middle words on the wheel where it's under joy. It's under the joy category of emotion. But proud can also be drilled down into, gosh dang it, and I'm not going to remember the other one because the one that I resonated most with was triumphant. And that's exactly how I felt. Was like, I said exactly what needed to be said. That feeling is the most dominant. Like out of all of these other feelings of like, I did it wrong, or, she was already showing emotion, whether, it's genuinely coming from where she said it was, or she's manufacturing it. I don't know. I think I know, but that was, that's a different part of the conversation. I made a judgment call. And like I said, the words flowed out of my mouth. And I've learned that basically, especially when it comes to standing up for myself, to just trust the timing of when that comes out and trust that it's not only for my highest good, but for everyone's highest good. Like, in no part of that conversation did I ever condemn her as a person. If anything, like I said, I'm sad because she was one of my favorite people. That's like ever worked for me. She was just one of the best ones. And it's sad to see that, it makes me wonder if there's not something bigger going on in her life, that hopefully this wake up call, this like consequence to her choices, I don't think she's aware that like her choices, I mean, when you choose to participate with other people, your choices have consequences. Like there's ripple effects that are hitting other people. And yeah, it's a very interesting situation that I'm excited to see what comes from this conversation with her. The other emotion that I don't know if I would have found this without the wheel, but I did, uh, is relieved. When I read that, I was like, oh, yes, I am. I am relieved because this has been going on for long enough, for longer than long enough, probably. And I've said what needed to be said, and the ball's in her court. And all in all, I'm actually like, when I only separate out the part of me that did assert itself, that part of me is proud of what I said and how I said it, and the loving way that I said it, and the direct way that I said it. That part of me is proud of all of those things and sees absolutely nothing wrong with how I handled that situation. It's only when I go back to the part of me that doesn't want to assert myself in the first place that, yeah, they got a laundry list of things that they're not happy with how that unfolding went, and they're nervous more than anything. They're afraid that there will be blowback, or that it's, gonna have some negative ramification that'll just be the end all be all of everything. I guess I don't know what that fear really roots down into, because when you really start trying to understand, like, what are you so worried about? Like, yeah, I said this, and now you're afraid of like what's going to happen. What's going to happen? Like it's just, yeah, there's not a whole lot of like real content behind that fear. I think it's more of a general nervousness of like any amount of self-expression that isn't love, light, and happiness, like if it's negative or controversial, like, yeah, it's just like an inherent worry that comes up in me. And I practice seeing through that and asserting myself with love in any moment where that's what I'm called to do. If it's falling out of my mouth without me even thinking about it, isn't that what I practice? Like, isn't that, I mean, I'm practicing my channeling with these episodes like basically every day at this point. Like, I want to speak the energy that's present and do it with love and do it for the greater good, do it for my highest good and the highest good of everyone. And then some words fell out of my mouth, and my instant reaction was to second guess myself. And it doesn't feel good to second guess yourself at all. And I'm just really, really grateful that I had enough space to recognize that, yes, this is a powerful, complex mix of emotions, but it's also got some good in it. There are these feelings of being relieved, which is a peaceful feeling, which falls under the category of love. Like, it was an act of self-love for me to say what I said to her. Like, stop, I obviously didn't use these words again. Stop jerking us around. Stop it. Like, we matter. We need this. And you get to decide, do you want to deliver that or not? And if not, no hard feelings, but then move on and find something that works for you and let us find someone who wants to be here. So it was absolutely an act of self love to support myself, my side of the situation, and to not just automatically let the other person's momentum be dominant. Like, Dolly and I were talking about people pleasing the other day and how inherent a skill it can be to just like automatically want to be like, oh, okay, well, sorry to hear that. Yep, have a good day. And to not shed any light on, do, do you even understand how many complications that creates that other people have to solve now because of this behavior that has basically become a routine? No more. No more. We're not going to put up with that anymore. That was absolutely an act of self love. It was very much me putting down a boundary around what we're willing to accept. And of course, when we're still in the early stages of learning how to put down boundaries, which I absolutely am, when we do it, it triggers the parts of ourselves that have prevented us from putting down boundaries in the first place. The part of us that's like, we must people please, otherwise people won't like us and we won't have value, and we just, the worst thing's gonna happen at that point, I guess. A lot of times I fall into that situation, and today I didn't. And in that huge ball of buzzing emotion, it was so soothing even to realize that not all of these emotions are bad. Some of these things that have come up are actually good. Can't wait to get there. So obviously when I started with the wheel, I started in the positive categories. I started with like, what are these good feelings that I'm feeling? And that's why finding triumphant and finding relieved really helped take the tenseness out of my body and kind of relax a little bit, that like, I trust the emotions that are coming up to be an indicator of guiding me along my path. And if I'm feeling relief, if I'm feeling triumphant, then I'm moving in the direction that I'm supposed to go. And the rest of all of these emotions that are in this pile that came forward for me to sort out, those things, they have something to say also. And as I've processed through, my aggravated, displeased, inferior, triggered emotions that have come up, so much of it was about making this this connection and having this clarity that like the voice that's saying those things, those negative emotions that are coming up, the inferior especially, um, that that's the side of me that would put up with anybody's shit forever because she's not going to rock the boat. She's going to people please till her last breath. And she is going to take whatever life gives her, whatever other people give her, and she's just going to float along and not make waves. And there is a different part of me that is emerging as I practice my self love, where not that I am a roaring warrior by any stretch of the imagination, but when enough is enough, I'm really proud of myself for being able to say that, because that has not always been the case. That's been something that I don't even think that I really set out to learn that on purpose. I more was wanting to be happy and wanting to love myself and love my life, and along the way I got sure enough about my own goodness to be able to say when something doesn't work for me. And this morning, that probably is my favorite, most powerful takeaway, is to be able to see that this new part of me that I've been developing for these last several years is becoming dominant, is becoming like, she spoke in that moment with that employee without me even thinking about it. She just popped up and she had her words and she said them, and that was it. Conversation over. Okay, bye. And wow. Wow, I barely knew she was in there. So to see her pop up and contribute this morning was very powerful and illuminating, because it also made it that much more clear of this old version of myself and those voices of doubt and worry and self-criticism that are coming from this old outdated self, and that there is a new self and a new sheriff in town, and she is really badass. She's very cool. She's very loving, but not afraid to lay down a boundary when she needs to. So it's like the best of both worlds. You know what I mean? Yeah, I think you do. So that I think that's all I got. Like right before, this is another little piece that I was going to add. So as I as I got off the phone with her and I was instantly full of emotion, of emotional energy. My body is just buzzed. My mind is buzzed. My body is buzzed. And that just means like the thoughts are flowing faster than I can even make sense of them. And my body feels really uncomfortable. It feels really full. And I start my journaling process and I get into all of this. And almost instantly, I can feel that this this should end in a talk therapy session. Like I should do a talk therapy session where I take this big ball of energy and I unpack it so that people can see, like, this is what you do with a big ball of energy. This is, it's complex emotions, like 101. Like, let's not just talk about it. Let's actually take this like buzzing feeling in my body that's like making me freaking twitch, and let's see if we can do something with it. Let's see if we can bring our tools and understand it and shine some light on it and connect some dots. And that felt really good. And I like almost went to start recording, and then I was like, you know what, like I'm going to do just a little bit more journaling. I'm going to get my mind wrapped around this a little bit more. And as I did the little bit more of journaling, that's when I got the idea to go to the emotion wheel and look at that and read around the outside and pull out those emotional keywords that really resonated and helped me to understand what is this big ball of interconnected emotional energy that's now present within me. And that's where I got, triumphant and aggravated and displeased and inferior and relieved and touched and stimulated. All of these words to describe this pulsing energy. And it's so amazing as as we've taken it from that place of like, my body's twitching, I feel uncomfortable, I have conflicting thoughts and conflicting energies within me. I did a good job. No, I didn't do a good job. Like, I feel confused more than anything at this point. Um, to take all of that and work it through this talk therapy session and bringing this awareness to it, my body is relaxed. There is no longer a ball of energy inside of me. And I'm not, I fully expect, usually when these complex emotions come up, you can expect that there's the initial awareness and then there's how this is going to connect into other things over this next week or so. Uh, this is going to be context and narrative and background for other points that are continuing to be made, which is really cool because uh, I was in new territory today with asserting myself and laying down my boundaries in a loving way. And I'm very open, she says hesitantly, she's secretly somewhat nervous. I'm very open to opportunities arising where I get to do more of that, and I get to see my new self that I'm building pop up again and again and again. And that's very exciting. That's very, very exciting. So I love having the tools in my toolbox to, I mean, I use that analogy a lot, and I wonder how, if that's not the analogy that works for you, by all means, like whatever works. But for me, the toolbox is something that's mine, like as in it's an energetic toolbox. Nobody can take it away from me. It's physically safe and sound. There's no need to worry about somebody coming in and stealing this. So there's a sense of security in the toolbox. And then inside the toolbox are all of the things that I've ever learned, all of the coping mechanisms, all of my habits for self love that I've cultivated, all of my practice around reaching for gratitude and seeing things in a positive light, all of my ability to take a deep breath when I'm feeling powerful energy. All of, like it, the list goes on and on and on. I'm with all of the tools that are in there. That's actually a really fun list to make sometime if you haven't ever done it. Like, what tools are in your toolbox? Guarantee you the list is longer than you think it is. So I, yeah, the toolbox is, it's very personal and it's a very secure source of resource and backup and support. And this morning in this space of, it's now been 2 hours since the stimulating or triggering event. In that space of 2 hours, thanks to the tools that I have packed into my toolbox in these last 33 years, I'm able to receive this giant rush of energy, this giant rush of interwoven, complicated, multifaceted emotion. This, I mean, that's a message. That's a message from your inner being, is what we know about emotions at this point, is that it's guidance. So to take the time and honor that this thing has presented itself and take the time to unpack it and see what's in there and understand that it isn't just one thing, it's a lot of different things. And you're not just one you. There's the old you, there's the new you that you're trying to build. There's all of these different things that come into play when we get into interpreting emotional, energetic information, which that's kind of the point of emotional intelligence. That's basically the skill that Abraham teaches, to be able to understand your emotions enough to follow them. Like, that complex emotion right there has some good and some bad. And we know that when it feels bad, you're leaning away. And when it feels good, you're leaning towards. And like, okay, what happens when I feel good and bad all at the same time? Like, well, sounds like you got some journaling to do. Sounds like you need to make a podcast episode or whatever your process is. I mean, whatever floats your cork, whatever helps you to slow it down enough to get some clarity around the pieces that are included and go from there in terms of how you want to put those together and find what feels good. Find the fit and the timing and the pace that feels good to you. And it's so much easier to practice emotional awareness and like using the wheel when it's a more straightforward situation. So if you feel something like inside of yourself in a strong enough way where you feel like you could name it, that's really the time to play with the wheel, not necessarily like, oh my God, I'm in a shitstorm and now I have no idea which way is up. I mean, you could totally get the wheel out and it might help you in that moment, but if that's the first time you're ever looking at it, it'll probably just frustrate you more than anything. Um, you know, I play with it quite a bit and not like a lot, but enough where it's not the first time I've laid eyes on it and I get the gist of how it works somewhat. And it was a very helpful tool in that sense of I'm feeling more things than I'm able to even identify. They're all overlapping in a way where I can't get a sense of any of it. That is absolutely a time that the wheel is genius, freaking genius. And talk about abundance, another online resource where all you got to do is Google emotion wheel and go to the images tab, and there's a million different versions of them there. So even if you're not somewhere where you have your printed emotion wheel right next to you, you're never cut off. You have your phone, Google it, it's right there. So wherever you are, that's an awesome resource for free that can help you in your process of listening to your emotional guidance and using that as a way to walk the path that your soul came to walk when you were born. So, this has been so fun, so satisfying, and all because of a topsy-turvy 3-minute emotion palooza that Source orchestrated for me this morning. So, thank you, Source, and thank you, friends, for listening. Until next time, you take good care, and so will I.